Welcome everyone. What an honor it is to greet you on behalf of the Brooklyn Public Library, our arts and culture team, BPL Presents, and this place, BPL's newly opened Center for Brooklyn History. My name is Masha Gessen. Tonight's conversation explores the seemingly irreconcilable narratives of Israel and Palestine, laid out through one tragic story, broadened to bring clarity to the tangled layers of history and land. You saw the book as you came in. It's called A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy by Nathan Thrall. We are enormously honored to have both Abed Salama and Nathan Thrall here tonight, and to welcome Masha Gessen as moderator. We're also enormously proud to present this discussion with partners Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the New York Review of Books, and Jewish Currents. So thank you all. Towards the end of the program, we'll open up to your questions. Please write them on the index cards you were offered as you came in and hand them to the ushers. And after the program, join us for a book signing on the other side of this wall. Now it is my pleasure to welcome tonight's participants and invite them to the stage. I'll tell you a little bit about each of them, a little bit, so we can get straight to their conversation, but it goes without saying that I could really go on and on. These are remarkable people. Nathan Thrall is the author of A Day in the Life of Abed Salama and the critically acclaimed essay collection, The Only Language They Understand, Forcing Compromise in Israel and Palestine. He spent a decade at the International Crisis Group, where he was director of the Arab-Israeli Project, and he writes frequently about the region. He's been described as, quote, one of the best informed and most trenchant observers of the conflict. Abed Salama is a Palestinian living under Israeli rule in the enclave of Anata in Greater Jerusalem. Salama's story of losing his 5-year-old son, Milad, in a harrowing school bus accident provides the framework for Thrall's depiction of Israel-Palestine. And Salama has traveled to the US to join in conversations like this about the book. And our moderator tonight is Masha Gessen, staff writer at The New Yorker and author of 11 books of nonfiction, most recently Surviving Autocracy, and The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia, which won the 2017 National Book Award for Nonfiction. They are a distinguished professor at the Craig Newark School of Journalism at CUNY and a distinguished visiting writer at Bard. So please help me welcome our speakers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be talking about this book on its publication day, right?
The day after. Yeah.
The day after its publication. It's really, it's a staggering achievement. It's particularly staggering because it's so short, but it's such an extraordinary work of history. It's an extraordinary work of prose. It's a couple of love stories. It's a beautiful, beautiful work of nonfiction that that breaks through something that I've been thinking about a lot getting ready for this conversation, which is that you never, when you talk about the occupation, when you talk about Israel-Palestine, I think you always come up against the question of what the audience knows and who you're talking to. And I think this makes Israel-Palestine really peculiar in sort of in the range of contemporary topics. Pretty much everything else that I've had to deal with. You kind of know what people know and what they don't know if they read the papers, if they watch some television, if they maybe come to a book event, so they read books maybe. And yet, for people living in the United States, for people living in Israel, the possibilities of not knowing are boundless. And this is a book that makes it impossible, right? And it does it in a genius way, which I'm going to try to get to in this conversation, but really you're just going to have to buy the book and read it to understand just how brilliantly structured and told it is. But to start with, can you two tell me about where you live and how you know each other?
Does this thing work? Yeah. Thank you very much. I had no idea I was going to hear all of that, and I'm moved to hear it. Abed and I live about 2.5 miles away from one another. I live in a neighborhood called Musrara, which is just outside the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. And Abed lives in a town called Anata that has been partially annexed. So it's a part of it is officially part of the sovereign state of Israel as far as Israel is concerned. And part of it is considered the West Bank. And all of it, the unannexed part of the West Bank, and all of it lies together with a Palestinian refugee camp called Shuafat. All of it lies within a walled ghetto. It's surrounded on 3 sides by a 26-foot tall concrete wall, and on the 4th side by a different kind of wall that runs down the middle of a segregated road that's famously known as the Apartheid Road. And when the accident happened, I was living in Jerusalem, and I had been driving past this walled ghetto on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, and not paying it much mind. And I think most people are that way. It was very easy to ignore this place that's part of the same city that I live in, but with a radically different existence on the other side of that wall. We'll get into some of that in a bit, but the way that Abed and I met each other was that when I was starting to investigate the accident, a good, very close family friend told me that one of the parents was a distant relative. And she put me in touch with a relative of Abed's, who put me in touch with Abed, and I found myself in his home.
Abed, do you want to talk about where you live?
First of all, I'm happy to be here between you.
Just hold it closer, that's all.
I'm happy to be here with you. Also, I'm happy to see all these people who are... I'm happy also to see all these faces, all these people coming here to support us and to listen or to hear from us about what the tragedy we have lived 10 years ago. First of all, I want to mention I'm not a 100% English speaker, so I want to apologize if I change some words or meanings. This man is behind me, he will correct me. So, again, I'm happy to be here. This is my first time here in U.S. I didn't expect any time to be here with you, among you American people who supported us as Palestinians. And it's my pleasure to be here with you and to share you my story and to support Nathan with publishing his book. Thank you.
So, Abed, you met Nathan after your family suffered a terrible tragedy. And why did you trust him to write the story?
First of all, you know, it was a horrible accident at that time. Many journalists came and asked and wanted to make something to write about this tragedy. But I don't want to say that because Nathan behind me is my friend, yani. But honestly, when he started, first of all, when I received his first call to me that he wanted to come and to ask me how to talk to me and with my family about what happened to my son Mila from the beginning, from the first day of the accident, she didn't cry, never. Until now, she didn't cry. She's so shocked. And she didn't also allow to me to be cry because I'm a man. A man, a Palestinian man shouldn't cry. So when he come and meet me and he started to ask questions and he said, Abed, I want to make a story, an article about what happened to your son in that accident, and I will put it as a nuwa, as a to write about what happened between the Israelis and the Palestinians in that area. Nathan was the first one, the first person, the first journalist who said that. So from inside, I was happy because he wanted to use my story to show the people around the world what is the occupation, the Israeli occupation, do to us. I tell him, okay, I will share you some information. When he left, I sat with my wife and asked her, I told him, from the beginning, I trust this guy. He will make something big, not for us, but for our issue, Palestinian issue. In the night, I received a call from the translator that he bring him with him. So because there I wasn't speaking like this. He said, Abed, Nathan asked if he can make your story the base of the book. I agreed without going back to my wife. She was against this matter. So from here we start. He came to visit me. We met at hundreds of hours sitting together. He made me cry a lot of times. Yeah, he did many times. So I think after the book is published and I see and I read what he wrote, I think that I took the correct decision to share him my story. Yeah.
And Nathan, there were several families whose children died in the accident. You chose Abed and his family there are many actual characters in the book. But the book, of course, is called A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, and it begins with an extremely close telling of Abed's story. Why?
When Abed finished the book, he asked me the same question. There is another story in the book of a mother who suffers a incomprehensible loss, and Abed's asked me, why didn't you put her at the center of this book? Why did you choose me? And there are a couple of reasons for that. And what I told Abed was, one of them was just the connection that I had with him, and the specificity of his story, and the way in which he hanged search over 24 hours for his son. But the other reason is that the ambition of the book was to tell the entire story of Israel-Palestine through this one event. And I could only do that through Abed, who comes from a family that is very prominent in the town of Anata, and who himself lived a life through activism in the First Intifada and imprisonment and torture, who was forced by this system even to choose a wife at one point just to keep his freedom of movement and keep his job, to try and marry somebody who had the right color ID that would allow him to keep his job. And so that was another reason that this is a day in the life of Abed Salama.
And what was, Abed, I'd like to hear from you first. What was the process like of working with Nathan? How much did you talk? What kinds of questions did he ask you?
He didn't stop asking and until now. He asked me many questions. He entered in the bottom of my life. So because I trust him, I answered all his questions. Until now and tomorrow and after tomorrow, anything he wants to know about me and my life, I will tell him it. Nathan is not because he's a writer or he is now my friend, because he's a trusted man. He is telling the truth. Every word, every sentence, he wrote it in the book. It's the truth. It's the real. Yeah.
Nathan, what was the process like for you?
A lot of the conversations felt less like interviews and more like therapy. Abed and I cried a lot together. I would come home and relay stories, Abed's stories, but also those of other characters, those of some of his relatives, and tell them to my wife, who would weep as I relayed the stories. It was a very intense process emotionally, reporting the book. And I felt a tremendous responsibility because of the trust that Abed put in me.
How many hours of interviews did you record? How long did this whole process take?
Hundreds of hours. I'm not sure exactly. Probably well over 1,000. I'm not sure. And it began in 2019. So we're 4 years later. Yeah.
So, the writing approach, and I assume this is very much intentional, it's what we call in the trades the close third. You are always in this, and sometimes sort of claustrophobically so, in the headspace of the person who's going through life. And there isn't a whole lot of stuff in quotations unless we're actually witnessing dialogue. So it's written very much the way a novel is written. You don't see a whole lot of this kind of writing in nonfiction, although I'm partial to it. What kind of interviewing do you have to do in order to get to that? And what kind of questions do you ask? Like, how do you get to what people smelled and what they saw?
In this particular case, I have to say that I don't think it was any great virtue of mine. It was that many of these people were hungry to speak about something that nobody wanted to talk about around them. There was a cloud of silence in many of these homes around the accident. There were many times where I convened several family members and they had said that this was the first time that they were talking about it since weeks after the accident had happened. And so in a number of cases, it just came pouring out. But it also took tremendous patience and trust and cooperation from people like Abed, who had me ask him things like, what did you smell, over and over again, and to come to him with very, very minor, specific details.
But I wonder what that was like for you, and also if you agreed at the time that all of what you were discussing was relevant to the story of the accident. I mean, Nathan had you download the history of all your loves, and we see you growing up in the book long before the accident. Why is that part of the story of the accident?
If I understand truly, you ask about my life before the accident?
No, the question is, when I'm asking you all these questions that aren't about the accident, I'm asking you all these questions about your life, and how do you react when, there are things I'm asking you that don't seem to have any. I thought you were writing a book about the accident. Why are you asking me about my first love?
Listen, for me it's okay. Sometimes maybe you need somebody to share him your feelings and what happened with you when you was young. But truly, I didn't expect that he would write this in the book. Truly. Well, I swear. So all the time I was asking him, Nathan, can you send me, please? What did you write? He said, no, the publisher didn't want this. I can't send you anything. Until I read the book. When he gave me the book, I shocked. When I start to read it, it's my own life. It's my secret. Everything in this book, it's my own life in this book. All the world will know about what I did and what it happened with me. So I felt angry. I called him and I said, Nathan, I didn't expect that you will write all this information about me. So you are an Arab and we are in a close community. The man who married Ghazal, if he know that is this relation between me and his wife, maybe he will kill me. Maybe he will, and her brothers and everything. So I was angry at the beginning. After that, he told me, Abed, continue reading, and in the end you will be reach the point. Is that correct?
Yes.
After this anger, honestly, I didn't want to finish the book from the first night. So I spent 3 nights reading the book. I started to read after my wife and my children go to sleep. So because I know what he did with me when he wrote the article. He crushed me. Nathan, when I read the article the first time, it's like that he, I don't know, digging my heart and taking off every sadness and everything from the bottom of my heart. So I was afraid at that time, to finish the book for the first night. I continued reading I finished it in the third night. My wife and my daughters was leaving, so I finished it at 3 o'clock. When I reached the last page, so I thought that my story is ended. My sadness is ended. My happiness is ended. Everything is ended, and I will go back to my natural life, as any Palestinian who live to work and to feed his family. And even in this age, I can't love him. I can't love again. So I sent him a message in the middle of the night. I told him, Nathan, I don't want to do. I finished the book, but what will be after there's nothing I will do after it. It's like you bring him back to me. For the last 3 years, when we are talking about him, I felt that he's alive, he's between us. Now I felt that he's with us, yeah. But now, what will happen? I don't want to bury my son again. I buried him once, and second, when my cousin insisted that he want to bury his son in the same grave, and this will be the third time. I can't, So in the morning, he was sleeping. He's sleeping, and spent all my night crying and smoking, drinking coffee, and there's nothing to do. In the 9 of the morning, he called me back. He said, I'm sorry, Abed, it will be fine, and. At that time, he said, when it's not ended. When the book is published in US, you will come, and you will continue speaking about your son, and you will talk. But I'm sure one day this matter will end it, and I be sure that I have lost my son forever. Yeah.
Nathan, can I ask you to read chapter 11 to us?
Nearly 20 minutes had passed since Huda and her staff had come upon the burning bus. Flames and smoke were still pouring from the smashed windows. Huda's driver, Abu Faraj, was directing traffic, keeping an open path for the evacuees and telling drivers of oncoming cars to turn back. The crowd had grown so large that Huda could no longer see the driver and the teacher she and Salim had pulled from the front of the bus. She was focused on the children, gently carrying them with one of the UN nurses to the cars that had stopped at the accident site. Many of the drivers had volunteered to transport the burn victims and stood ready to race to the nearest accessible hospital, which, for most of them, was in Ramallah. The hospitals in Jerusalem were far better, but only those with blue IDs could reach them. A few of the drivers did have blue IDs, and some took off in the direction of Hadassah Hospital at Mount Scopus in Jerusalem. The majority, those with green IDs, went in the opposite direction, along the flooded road to Ramallah. Nearly all the children had been brought off the bus when Salim, who had by now gone in and out of the flames several times, saw that Ula, the teacher, and his partner in the rescue, was trapped beneath a front seat, and her leg was burning. But by the time he got to her, it was too late. She was gone. He carried Ula from the bus and placed her on the ground. Her nephew, Saadi, watched in the rain while a man covered her with his coat. In all of this, Salim had felt nothing, not even as someone in the crowd grabbed at his arm and pinched him. One of Huda's nurses yelled to him that his jacket was on fire. He shouted back that it was not. The nurse put it out as he went to climb back into the bus. The few children still inside were no longer alive. The last boy Salim pulled out was facing down, crouched behind the frame of a seat. He was still wearing a backpack, which Salim held to pick the boy up. Stepping out of the bus for the final time, Salim broke out weeping, shouting that he should have saved more. Somehow, not a hair on his head was burned. Abu Faraj stood unmoving, in shock, as if mesmerized by the flames. Huda turned to the nurse beside her and saw that her face was black and streaked by rain. She realized she must look the same. They were soaked and bone-weary, and there was nothing more for them to do. When a Palestinian ambulance finally arrived, most of the injured children had already been evacuated. Huda didn't even notice it. The bus was still crackling with flames, and there was much shouting and commotion. Not a single firefighter, police officer, or soldier had come. Huda wanted to follow the children. She found her team, and they returned to the UNRWA van. Nida, the pregnant pharmacist, was still inside, inconsolable. Abu Faraj started dropping off everyone at home as Huda called around and confirmed that most of the children were in Ramallah. Then she phoned her UNRWA supervisor. He didn't understand the magnitude of the accident and demanded that the team turn around and go to Khan al-Ahmar, or he would cut their pay. Huda refused and said he should cut just her salary, no one else's. After stopping for a quick shower, Huda set off for the hospital, taking the clinic's social worker with her. When they got there, word spread that Huda had been at the crash. A great many parents and other relatives sought her out, asking whether she had seen a boy with a Spider-Man backpack, a girl with her hair and yellow ribbons. Huda told them all the same thing. The children had been covered in soot, and she couldn't tell what they were wearing. Going from room to room, Huda checked on the injured children, soothing them. Since leaving the bus, she had felt something nagging at her. She was sure the kindergartners had been silent, at least early in their ordeal. Now, at the bed of one girl, Huda asked her why that was, why she had heard no sound. "We were so scared," the girl said. "When we saw the flames, we thought we had died. We thought we were in hell."
Thank you. So that chapter that describes the actual accident comes in the middle of the book. It's almost exactly in the middle of the book, which fascinates me as a structural decision. Can you talk about how you sort of figured out the structure of the story?
Yeah. I have to say the structure of this book was the greatest challenge. One of the reasons why it was so challenging is because I was trying to do two things, to balance two chronologies. Because the ambition of the book is to tell the whole story of Israel-Palestine, I'm also taking a character like Huda and telling the story of the Nakba. But I have to tell the story of the Nakba before I tell things that follow the Nakba. On the other hand, Huda can only come into the picture when Huda actually enters the accident. And all of these people came upon the scene of the accident, or the most relevant moment of their interaction with the accident was at a different time. So this created it was a big puzzle. And so, yeah, it wound up also meaning a lot of really prioritizing and cutting, and also that my temptation as a writer is always to include everything. And so I would have loved to tell the story, I'd tell a little bit about the Bedouin that she was going to visit at Khan al-Ahmar, who live on actually Abed's family land. And I would have loved to tell more of their story, and there are 100 other examples, but in order for the book to work, I really needed to keep tightly focused on the accident and not allow those historical interludes to go on for very long.
I feel like by the time we get to really understanding what happened, how the accident happened. We know that there's an accident from the very beginning of the book, but by the time we know that the driver of the truck that collided with the bus was undertrained and had an unsafe record, and we learned all sorts of things about the mechanics of the accident. The word accident seems totally inappropriate. Right? And I'd love to hear both of you talk about that, because to me it seems that that's what the book is about. It's about how it's not an accident.
Well, I'm glad that that's what you think the book is about, because that is what the book is about. Yeah, I mean, I was interviewed recently by a journalist, an Israeli journalist, who in the passage I just read, I mentioned a character named Salam, who went into the bus. He was acted truly selflessly and went repeatedly on his own into this burning bus and single-handedly, with the help of Ula, rescued dozens of children. And afterward, he had a meltdown and was screaming at everyone and anyone in his vicinity, at the emergency service personnel, both Palestinian and Israeli. And he screams at them, you killed these kids. Why didn't you come? And so the Israeli journalist read back that passage to me and said, so you're saying that Israel wanted these kids to die, that Israel tried to kill these kids, that they knew that the bus was burning and they deliberately didn't come. And I said, well, you're reading what Salam said to these Israeli soldiers, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the entire set of circumstances that happened on this day were the predictable outcome of an entire apparatus that put in place a wall around this community, the total neglect of the tens of thousands of people who live on it, a partition of the West Bank into areas A, B, and C, not allowing the Palestinian Authority to come onto the road where the accident took place, but at the same time, Israel not caring at all about what happens on this road. It's patrolled by Israeli police, but entirely neglected. And in addition, just the very fact that this enclave that Abed and his family live in have this crazy system where some of them have green IDs and some of them have blue IDs in the same family. The municipality, doesn't provide them with a school, forces the kids to either go through a checkpoint for hours, and the parents are frightened to have their kids interact with soldiers, or to go to a dilapidated school in a former goat pen, or, as these parents did, to pay to send their kids to a school technically in the unannexed part of the West Bank. And so that is the real cause of all of the delayed response and everything else that transpired on that day. And that's what the book slowly unravels. What is the reason that the accident happened in this way? I just want to add one thing, is that, there is an overriding logic which is driving all of those micro decisions, which is a very simple logic, which is in order to keep as many Jews in the heart of Jerusalem and as few Palestinians. That dictated the route of the wall, and it's an explicit goal of the state to keep as high a number of Jews inside Jerusalem, a proportion of Jews inside Jerusalem as possible. And the lives of these people are affected in 1,000 different ways by that central goal.
I wasn't interested in before the accident. What is this road is under the Israelis or under the power of the PA? But after the accident, we started to hear, and everyone, the PA and the Israelis, started to push away the responsibility away from them. So, but in the end, we understand this street is under the control of the Israeli military. Why? Because it's not far from the place of the accident. There is a Israeli base, and 50 meters down, there is an Israeli checkpoint. So the street is under the control of the military, of the occupation. The accident happened like this. The street was, first of all, the weather was very stormy. So the trailer driver, he wanted to bring many rocks. Yeah, rocks. No. The trailer driver, the trailer, Kekas. So he drove quickly, and when they checked his phone, they find that he was on phone for 43 minutes speaking on phone, and the street wasn't like it now. Now they put they cross it in an iron, cross it, between it, way for the home going to Ramallah, and the other for the home going back to Anata or to any place. And the tragedy is what? The tragedy is because the truck smashed the bus, and he fall down. The bus is old, and the chairs of the bus and the ground from wood and plastic. Said there was a contact, an electric contact in the bus. When the people come to save the children, they broke the window.
Somebody broke through
the back window. So the air started to pass through the bus, and the fire grew up. This is why is the bus? The accident was very hard. This is the reason.
I just want to add that in many of my conversations with parents involved in the accident, there was a real focus on many micro proximate causes, and almost no discussion of what was prominent in my mind, which is this macro structure that made this tragedy, which would be a tragedy anywhere, so much worse because of the unique circumstances of who the victims were and where it took place. And there's this famous David Foster Wallace graduation speech where he tells the anecdote of fish, and one fish said something like, "How's the water?" and the other fish says, "What's water?" And that's a little what it felt like talking to people about the causes of this accident, because they were thinking about the driver and the weather and the materials that the bus was made of. But what about the fact that all of these kids had a play area just on the other side of the wall, that they couldn't go to, and they followed the snaking path of the wall to the outskirts of Ramallah in order to go on this excursion.
The extraordinary thing, one of the extraordinary things about the book, and we should be shifting to taking questions from the audience, so I'm waiting for the index cards. Thank you. But first I'm going to allow myself this comment. So one of the things that I love about the book is that it forces you to make that conclusion, that it's not an accident, right? You don't quite spell it out. But one of the ways, one of the things that really struck me is that by diving deeply into Abed's life and Huda's life, we see over and over again how gradual this this process of restricting people's freedom was. How, you know, there's in addition to the fish and water, there's also the boiled frog syndrome, all those horrible allegories that we use for describing that thing that we do as humans, which is we adapt. And so, but when you write about what life was like when these people were younger, and how there weren't these color-coded IDs, and how there wasn't this sense of constant terror, and most important, how slowly the fear for their children's safety descended on them, and how by the time again you get to the actual scene of the accident, I think you're terrified for everybody's children all the time, right? For all of your characters' children, which I find powerful and terrifying. Questions for all three of you. Can you imagine a future that looks different and better? Abed?
In Palestine, the question? Oh, I hope it will be. But 2 weeks ago, I saw a video for George Galloway. George Galloway, British senator he was, I think. So he said, I spent 40 years acting in the Palestinian issue and defend the Palestinians and against the occupation. But I don't think Palestine will be free in this time. Maybe he was speaking to people, Palestinian people. Even maybe not, you will not see your country free, Palestine free, but I'm sure it will be free when your sons, I'm sure it will be good. So I agree with him. I hope. We want to be free. This is my first time in US. I told them, some friends yesterday, when I reached here in New York, I saw everybody making sports and running, and they live their life. Couples walking together, safe and free. So there we missed this, all these. I was jealous when I see everyone here taking his dog for a ride outside his home. I have a dog named Roxy, he's Pitbull. You know, Pitbull, it's a strong dog. So I'm afraid to take him down street. I'm afraid, I don't want him to attack a kid or a man down street. I kept him up on the roof. I play with him on my roof. Freedom is then something, I don't know how to say it, it's very expensive. Freedom, because we missed it. I born under occupation. I born in 1969. When I was young, I just wanted to build a house to marry the woman whom I love, to bring children. This is what I want to do. And then I started to build my house. I built a half of my house, then started the first intifada started. So every Palestinian shared an intifada, as I. So I arrested, I missed my girlfriend, so I lost my job, lost. So because of that, I've changed all of the occupation changed all of my life as the other Palestinians, not me only, all the Palestinians. We called it, when a Palestinian arrested, this is a tax, you have to pay it to go in prison or to kill or to, I don't know. The occupation must punish you in any way. So I hope with you and with people like you here in the United States to help us to take our freedom. We are sure that America can do it. And she can push on the Israelis. I hope. Maybe your girl will be not right. Maybe I will see this day before I die. Maybe. So that's it.
Nathan?
One of the main goals of this book is to take us away from a conversation about hypothetical futures. Those futures may come or they may not come. They certainly look very, very far away. But there is a certain comfort that a lot of people have with having this debate. What ought that future look like? One state, two states, confederation, let's debate it. Of course, this present situation, the one that I describe in this book, is horrible. Nope, there's no denying it. It's awful, but it's temporary, and let's focus on how to get out of it by agreeing all together on what that future state ought to look like. And I feel that very conversation actually facilitates the ongoing oppression and suffering that we see. And the ambition of doing a narrative work like this is to force people to confront the reality that those conversations allow them to ignore. I don't want to talk about Huda being powerless to protect her teenage boy from being arrested at 1 a.m. for throwing stones at an occupying soldier and being entirely powerless to do anything to even find her son over the coming days after his arrest. Don't confront me with that. I want to talk about one state and two states and all the rest of it.
And I think there's also a flip side to that, that comfort, which is, this is my experience, and I haven't reported in Israel-Palestine nearly as much as you have, but my experience reporting there is that the people who have the luxury of sort of looking wistful and saying, but there's no solution, are the people who are comfortable living in a situation to which they see no solution. Speaking of which, I don't know if it's too soon to ask this question, but somebody in the audience wants to know what the Israeli response to the book has been.
It is too soon. Yeah.
For Abed, if there's one thing you'd like people to walk away from reading this book about life, Israel, Palestine, about your son, what is it? To take from this book.
What they will take away from it, what they will conclude from reading it, what understanding they come to.
I want him to understand that our issue is bigger than the accident itself. There are many victims, from Palestinian victims, under the Israeli occupation. So I want from the people here to search for the truth, to see the truth. I'm sorry to say that the American media is not telling the truth. But now the social media, you can see everything, and also the truth in the day of the life of Abed Salama. I can swear that it is the truth. Every single word, every sentence is the truth. He wrote this book not with his ink, with the ink of his pen. He wrote this book with our pain, with our tragedy. Because of that, I'm sure this book will make some changes one day. Maybe this year, maybe next year, I don't know. But I'm sure, because there's many people here. You are only Americans. Why are you coming here to hear about what happened there in Palestine? Or what happened with this man who married 3 wives, or what? You are here because you are humans before you are Americans or Jews or what. We are human. There is no any matter for me to live in any neighborhood, if they allow to me, in Bisgat Ze'ev or Navi Yaakov with Israelis. I have no matter to, I bring them to my house 5 days, 6 days after the accident. You Nata write that in his book. So I received them in my own heart. Our angel was deep. And I also answered the phone of the man, he's from the Shabak. The Shabak who maybe week or 2 weeks ago, he arrested my brother or my cousin. I answered him by respect. Okay, thank you for your call, thank you. We are humans before we are Jewish or Muslims or Christians. We are human. We have the right to live and love and to build the houses. This is the last occupation in the 21st century. This is, what can I say more than that? Everybody here knows. But to know it's not enough. We have to act. We have to do. And I want, if you really wanted to help us and to show the truth to your, I don't know if they care or not, presidents or, you can do it. This is what I hope from all of you here. And for me, that's it. As a Palestinian, we speak a lot in many places, everyone by his way, by his tragedy, but what happened to him, by his suffering, everyone, every Palestinian lived there in Palestine, have a story. I just want to tell you one story. A friend of mine who was working with me, he had a blue ID in the same company. So his cousin, both of his cousins, attacked Israelis. They are from Jabal Mukabbir, called it Jabal Mukabbir. I know the man, he works with me, he is very gentle, cute, and he's cool. And he just only want to live. He had 3 children. So the soldiers came to their neighborhood. They lived together, and because they are close, his cousins together. The soldiers came and bring all the guys outside their houses and the women, and they took his clothes out. Allah. And they naked him. Every woman, every man there, they're watching. So they changed him. Weeks after that, he drove his car, and I'm not with him. I'm not what he did. I'm not. But they are pushing us to attack. We did nothing. He take his car and he crashed 2 or 3 settlers, and they shoot him. This is also one case. We lived it. Also, there is Abir Aramin. Maybe you heard about what happened. Abir Aramin, they killed her maybe 20 meters far from my house. 20 meters. In our area, in Anata, there is no settlers, there is no Jews, there is no police stations. As he said, as a ghetto, we lived as Palestinians only. Abir go out from her school, police, border, jeep, bus. One of them like to shoot a bomb of gas, hit her in her head. She is 12 years old. He killed her. And this is what happened. This is some what happened in our neighborhood, not in Nablus or Jenin or Jerusalem. If I spend 1 year, I will not finish what happened to us there. And they are blaming us to attack. If you as Americans, I know the law. I loved American movies a lot, action American movies. So, if one come to you back stranger, get in your back garden, your garden, do you have the right to shoot him or not? Nobody say yes. Okay. I know the law. I understand. I saw it in movies. You have the right to shoot him. He attacked you. They are attacking us. And they took our land. And they built in our land. And they didn't give us the right. The United Nations gave us the right to attack our right road, to defend ourselves. So, they didn't allow to us. And in the end, they blamed us. Maybe I speak a lot,
Go ahead.
Okay. So there is a spring. He wrote in the book, there's a settlement called Anatot. Anatot, they built it in our lands, in Anatot. Some of the houses in our land, we didn't sold it. Even the base, there's a base also against the settlers, also from our lands. My grandfather, my grandfather from my mother said he was a Mukhtar, and he was the only one who was at that time writing, and everyone come to want to sold his land. He changed the name of the man who buy and put his name and paid him the money, and okay, you can go, now this is my land. This is what my grandfather did. So because of that, we have land, a lot of land. In the Anatot settlement, after Anatot settlement, there is a spring called Thrall. Before they built this settlement, after the school, we go walking in our feet and swimming there, playing there. It was 14, 15 years old at that time. So after they built the settlement, now the Palestinian who have green ID, they didn't allow him to pass to the spring, to their land. We have to make a big, long circle to go there. And the funny, they charged us money, maybe 15, 13 shekels, 15 for the young and 13 shekels for everyone bigger, to cross our lands. What shall I say more? Thank you for giving me all this time.
Thank you. If this were a normal American book talk, I would now ask a question about a cheerful note that we could end it on. But I'm not going to do that. I would actually like to end it on the note that Abed just left us with. Thank you. Nathan is going to be signing books out there.